Hear ye, read all about it. 30,000 horses sick. Such were the headlines in the newspapers in August of 1872. The streets around western New York were quiet, not a horse to be found. Streetcars and buses have stopped running. All able-bodied men are called to pull the fire engines. In Rochester, dependent on the Erie Canal to ship its products far and wide, is in deep trouble as there are no horses to pull the barges. As Einstein said, in every difficulty lies opportunity. And such it was with my great-grandfather, Frank Milligan. A postman, he took his children down to the Erie Canal where they caught 24 carp. Needed a big net. He took each of the carp, outfitted them with a harness, constructed two carp yokes, took 4 carp, attached them to a barge of flour, tapped the yoke, and watched as the fish began to swim, pulling the barge down the canal. Now, Frank's first challenge came when he arrived at the first set of rapids. You see, the canal was not built for carp power. He sat at the rapids for about 10 minutes when all of a sudden, 2 of the carp leapt out of the water, latched onto the rapids. And right away, the other 2 jumped further up. And they kept leapfrogging like this until they cleared the rapids and continued swimming down the canal. Now, it took Frank 3 days to arrive in Buffalo with that flour. And it took him 3 days to come back to Rochester with a much-needed load of coal. Well, when they saw what happened, business leaders in Rochester seized the day. Within 5 days, Frank had outfitted 5 more teams of Milligan's mighty carp, and canal was busy again with traffic going in all directions. Now, his second challenge was he ran into a problem on that maiden voyage. You see, a team of carp can only pull a barge of flour 35 miles before they need to rest. And they need to rest for a full day. So Frank had a down day in each direction. Horses used to be stored in stables along the canal. Frank had to do something different with carp. So he constructed these pens and he put them in the canal where he would lock fresh batches of carp overnight. As more traffic built on the canal, more locks were needed. In fact, if you've driven down Clover Street near Jefferson Road, you've probably seen one of those locks. Turns out motorboats can't scale the rapids either. So they've modified them some to accommodate the new boaters. Now, Frank's third challenge was what to charge for the carp. He opted for 25 cents per head per day. So a barge operator with 4 carp had a $1 carpe diem. And Frank increased the load of carp. He built teams of 8, 10, and 20, and coined the term CC for canal carp to represent the strength of the team. So if you see a 35 cc engine now, that represents 35 canal carp. Now, the engineers who built the canal, they spent $500,000 putting an elevated tunnel across the Genesee River for horses to walk across. Had they started with carp, they could have saved that expense. Did you know that the aqueduct makes an L-shaped turn when it crosses the Genesee? Well, at the advent of carp power in 1872, the aqueduct was named the Carpel Tunnel. Now, Frank didn't only use carp on the canal. You realize that most of the oldest buildings in Rochester line the Genesee? Do you wonder why that is? Well, it turns out men could not pull the fire engines as fast as horses could, so many fires simply burned out of control. Well, Frank thought if carp can pull barges of flour, they could pull barges of firefighting equipment. So when the Rochester Shoe Company caught fire in late October, He took his carp pumper down the Genesee, drawing water out of the river, extinguished the fire. If it wasn't for Frank and his carp pumper, the Rochester River landscape would look a lot different. Now, he is one of the unsung heroes in Rochester, but Rochester would not be what it is today if it wasn't for Frank Milligan and his mighty carp. Mr. Contest Master.